here to talk about how we're using talking mats in the PACE school. So to start off a little bit of information about PACE, we are a school for students with neurodisabilities. Predominantly our students have cerebral palsy, though we do have students with other diagnoses as well, such as Rett's and other kind of like sort of neurological conditions. And we basically are aiming to create an environment where it's not just the students who are using AAC, but the class team that are working with them to create that aided language environment to ensure that our students are receiving a rich model of the communication system that they are the communication systems that they are using, that it's not just that they are being expected to use it in a talking environment, that when people are having conversations with them, they are also using AAC. But that does take effort, energy, and enthusiasm, and staffing and training. So we are very lucky in that all staff within the school and the PACE Centre in general, which also includes child and family and a fundraising team, because we are a charity, all staff, including the administrators and other health professionals. We also have physiotherapists and occupational therapists on the site who also receive the same training. We have a minimum of 12 hours training on communication as part of their induction, and the induction package itself is 18 weeks. So we look very holistically at kind of physical movement, strategies for regulation, and kind of like sort of it's a very comprehensive induction training package that all members of staff have to attend, including practicing using AAC, so that it's not daunting or unfamiliar when the students approach and use their AAC with anybody in the environment. Our learning support assistants also access 9 additional hours of training on AAC from our highly specialist communication assistants. So there are sessions for half an hour a week that run twice a week that any LSA or teacher or conductor can join in with. But it's strongly recommended that all new staff, it's mandatory for any new member of staff to attend those for a year, but any other member of staff is also welcome to drop in and practice their AAC skills. So there will be some kind of communication games. We may play barrier games with the staff so that they're kind of practicing their skills. We may do talk around. So if they can't find a symbol for something, how would they get to that word? So just helping staff to appreciate the cognitive effort that our students are having to put into generating communication, and also learning how to do that for themselves so they can model that to students as they're developing their skills. We also reassure staff that it's okay to make mistakes, like that acknowledgement that AAC is complicated, that it's not a thing that you just pick up. I think there's often still that sense that families will come to us with an expectation that once we get the right device in place, it will unlock a child's communication. And we're really trying to support families in understanding that actually using AAC is more complex than that, that actually it's a learning process and it's a journey to go on, and that we all have to be part of that shared journey with the students. And part of that learning how to use a communication system is learning how to make mistakes and to manage those mistakes and repair them, and to accept that that's part of our learning. We have a transdisciplinary approach to setting goals. So we all try to discuss all aspects of the goals as much as we can. We have like sort of allocated team times in class teams to share this, so that if there's a physiotherapy goal, but there's something around like so how to communicate that goal with that specific student, then the speech therapist would be involved. Or it may be something around task planning for us that the occupational therapy team can support on how to do the task planning to support a communication goal. So it's about that kind of really important embedded collaborative working. Another benefit that we have at PACE is that every class has a communication assistant within the class. So there is somebody who is advocating for the use of AAC and ensuring that there's a communication rich environment, and they all receive additional training as well on top of the other training that all the other staff receive. And that training might be identified on an individualised basis according to the needs of the class that year, but we do try to ensure that our communication assistants have a spread of communication from like sort of kind of pre-intentional communication, so understanding objects of reference, all the way up to complex use of kind of digital devices, so that they do understand a wide spread of different communication systems that our students may be accessing. We are present in the class, the speech and language therapy team. Every class has a named speech and language therapist who will be present in the class at least once a week for a group, but also providing additional support, which may be liaison with a tertiary centre such as ACE or something like that. And that we are encouraging them to use their AAC in lots and lots of different areas, that it's not just something that happens in lesson time, that they are able to use their devices at break time when they are in the community. We have had instances of a student approaching somebody in a garden centre and 2 members of staff kind of pincer moving this garden centre member of staff in so that they would actually have to interact with somebody using AAC, which worked quite effectively, and our student was quite proud of herself for having managed to achieve that interaction. And I hope that the garden centre member of staff is also proud of themselves at the end of it too. So it is a total communication approach. So we have students who are communicating at all levels of ability. So we are responsive and accept all sorts of different types of communication. And we found that Talking Mats has been a really useful tool for really helping our students to express their own views and opinions, that it can be an effective way to work alongside their AAC to create their own opinions for a variety of different reasons. So we might use Talking Mats to support emotional regulation and mental health. There's obviously burgeoning research around the impact of having communication and physical disabilities on mental health, and we are very proactive in supporting our students in the importance of their autonomy and their right to communicate their own needs and their right to say no. And Talking Mats can be really powerful in terms of understanding what a student's drivers are for why they are refusing to engage in certain activities. It can also help us to allow students to participate in setting their own goals for their education, health and care plans, so that they can be the agents of their own change. So that if they are setting their own goals, they will have that more of an intrinsic motivation and drive to achieve that goal, and we can work with them towards that. And respecting those goals, even if we as professionals may think that what they are hoping for might not be achievable in the short term, it's about working with them to understand where the barriers are and what we can work to together. So I always think of it as we are not basically creating goals in the front and pushing our students along towards our goals. We are seeing where our student is setting their sights and smoothing the path for them, because they are the ones who really need to have the autonomy around these things, because they are the ones who know what's most meaningful for them. And then obviously setting their goals before their EHCP, and continuing that process into their kind of like, so their termly goals as well, as much as is possible. And then also ensuring that their voices are part of their annual review, that they are able to talk clearly about what their experience to school is like, what their priorities are and what their hopes for the future are, that aren't just specifically set on that communication interaction movement regulation that the HCP loads of setting. Hopefully with using something like Talking Mats, it gives them freer rein to talk about a broader range of topics if they wish in terms of their student voice. So how we do this is usually Talking Mats are facilitated with the class communication assistant or the speech and language therapist. The long-term goal is that that shouldn't need to be the case, that we would like any member of the class team to be able to pick up a Talking Mat and to work with a student to identify their priorities and their responses. But at the moment, it's most of the speech and language therapists and our senior communication assistants who have actually attended the training. So that does make us best placed at this point in order to do that. We have been doing this for a couple of 2 to 3 years now, using talking mats to support with the EHCP and student voice processes, and have expanded it into, like, so the emotional regulation, because we can really see the value of it. We obviously need to spend that time supporting staff and becoming familiar with it. So at the moment, the onus is on communication assistants and speech and language therapists, but the long-term goal is that this is a strategy that lots of different members of the staff would be able to use to support their students in class, and to use it for a much broader range of conversations. We have provided training to the whole school on talking mats, but just doing a single training session really isn't enough to embed a strategy, in my experience. So we know that there's a lot more work to do to get this to be kind of a familiar, day-to-day accessible thing that staff will reach for. But the staff are very good at collaborating with us, and they are aware that we have support, and they will often spontaneously request that somebody does a talking mat with a student if they can see that somebody is seeming particularly anxious or has started to refuse an activity or something like that. Then members of staff are aware and will request that support. Yes, sorry, my fuzzy head is kicking in. Sorry, my slide wasn't changing. So if talking about using talking mats for social and emotional and mental health, there is a high risk of students with complex needs having mental health difficulties, as I mentioned. And for those students who are very dysregulated, and certainly for students with cerebral palsy, so that emotional ability can be a real barrier to communication and participation. So providing a system that isn't maybe quite as effortful as, say, their Podbook. Many of our students use Podbooks, or their digital AAC, where so if you're very dysregulated and using eye gaze or switches, that could be very, very difficult in order. But talking mats is a much more efficient way, and when you're with somebody you trust, it can be a much more effective way of communicating sort of your reservations and emotions around something. So it reduces the effort needed to communicate, which is very useful in covering emotive topics. And then it allows us to go into subtopics. So when we can see the things that are kind of impacting someone's participation, we can then maybe do some subtopics around those. And again, I think that's probably where speech and language therapists are quite important in the process, is actually thinking about the specific vocabulary needed. So working collaboratively with, at this point, the communication assistants to think about, well, what are the what's the vocabulary that should go into the subtopic that will populate the next talking mat, and thinking about the students, like, so kind of in the last we were talking about pre-teaching. And I do think one of the things that's useful with talking mats is that having the symbols there can actually cue students into maybe consider something that they wouldn't have considered if they were having to generate it all independently. It reduces that processing load, and maybe helps them to free up and see kind of a broader range of things that they may want to talk about, and thinking about different strategies that are available to help them regulate. So they may have been relying on, say, like sort of a breathing strategy or using a squeezy, and actually having a talking mat with a broad range of different things might cue them into trying something different. So it can be really positive for empowering that voice, and so empowering them with that speech. But sorry, I'm so sorry, I've lost my thread. I'm going to try and probably because I'm feeling a little bit anxious about whether this video is going to work. So that's my dysregulation. I'll hopefully, can I just check? Are you okay? Can you still all see this?
We've got the presentation,
but the video is not working.
But the video's not on there.
I am quite mindful of time, so what I might do is try and then skip the video and just go back to the presentation, if that's okay.
Yeah, we can come back to the video later or something. Also, Claire's got a question. I didn't know whether you wanted to.
Yes, sure. Yep.
Ask that, Claire.
Yep. Yes, Claire, hello.
Oh, she's put her hand up, but
Yes, but it's on mute. Hello, Claire. Very happy.
oh no, she's put her hand down. All good.
Sorry, I went up by accident. Sorry.
Oh yeah, we can just hear you, but
Is there a question, Claire? Sorry.
oh no, put her hand up by accident.
Oh, no problem at all. Oh, I do it all the time. Yes, sorry, I'm quite mindful of time. I've rabbited on. So the video will be there in the link if you do want to see a model of us using the talking mats for social and emotional regulation. In terms of using talking mats for student voice, we want every student to be able to provide feedback on their progress, their likes and their dislikes, and their aspirations, because these should really be the primary thing that informs their EHCP. We should be really starting from that view, from the student's view and their desires, and then the rest of the team we work to shape what we do. And the way I kind of put it is, because I had students, I do dysphagia as well, where students have said, I'm the boss of my own body. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, you're the boss of your own body. But a good boss listens to their experts, and I'm one of your experts, and this is my advice. And I think sometimes that can work quite usefully, and talking mats allows them to have that voice, to feel like they are the boss of what's going to happen next. And I think that's a really important thing. So we use different methods.
We haven't got your slides up at the moment. I don't know whether they're meant to be shown your screen just to...
Yes, I am. Sorry, thank you. I don't know why that hasn't happened. Let's go.
You're doing a fabulous job. Very impressed.
Oh, thank
Doing a
you.
good job.
You're very kind. Right. Is that sharing now?
Yeah, that's it. We've got the slide deck.
Cool. Sorry, thank you very much. So yes, so we don't just focus on academic goals, because our students, as we say, govern this, and they... Is it showing the
It's showing the slide deck, not the... There we go. We've got that. Perfect.
Thank you. Excellent. I'm so sorry. So the students often involve self-care and mobility and communication and friendships. So I think it's really, really important that we ensure that that's quite central. So we might do kind of quite symbolized, and I do see the point that maybe these are over symbolized. But so we might have this as the topic, the header topic for the talking mat. But you can choose, so you might do a different talking mat for each of these, which will cover all the range of voices. And then we might have different kind of like sort of scales that we would use. And the student would probably select the scale that works best for them. Lots of our students really rate the word tricky, because it doesn't seem to be a particularly loaded word in the way that bad or hard might be loaded. So tricky is a word that gets used a lot by our students. And then these are the kind of the different topic cards that we would have that they would be putting on their scale. Always making sure that we've got something different and some blanks as well, to make sure that we are not kind of reducing the voice to only the symbols that we think they might need. And then, sorry, I'm just mindful of time. Talking mats for goal setting. I think it's important to think about the way that we've developed the PACE curriculum, because certainly I find that if we're using any kind of standardized curriculum to measuring progress for students with neurodisabilities, they kind of tend to band-aid over the things that are really quite significant for our students in terms of things like attention and regulation and participation in activities of daily life. These aren't always necessarily specified in a standard curriculum. And these things are really, really important. Getting these things right, these executive functions, really is going to underpin all the rest of their learning, including the access to curriculum and learning. So we need to make sure that we are allowing our students to specify their priorities according to a much more holistic range of kind of areas that they can target. So we've got attention and regulation, activities of daily life, communication, emotional well-being, play and recreation, posture and movement, access to curriculum and learning, relationships, managing sensory processing and sensory loss. So some of our students may have some goals around the fact that they have a visual impairment and kind of wanting to spend some time exploring sounds or something like that. So they might be kind of prioritizing those things that it's really important to give them the space to talk about what their priorities are, rather than just assuming that they're going to want to really work on kind of maximizing the potential of their vision, because I'm like, it gives me a headache if I try and use my vision, but actually if I'm using my ears, it's more functional. So it's entirely up to the students to kind of govern the shape of their intervention, hopefully using something like this. It can make it quite complicated, and it can take a number of sessions in order to ensure that that voice is heard, which we do always hit up against the constant challenge in every school around time and stuff like this. But because our students are quite motivated, they would often give us like 15 minutes of their break time to do this because they see the value in it. And again, we might use the Talking Maps scales. There's a much, in terms of goal setting, which of the areas of the curriculum are the most important, what are the things they really want to work on right now. And then again, like sort of using the Talking Maps top scales, and some of the students might generate their own top scales using their pod book or electronic AAC, but they tend to be like, so no, I just want to talk about the goals. I just want to talk about the things I want to talk about. I don't care how you categorize it. But we want to make sure that students have the option to have control over all areas of the process. So this was one that one of our students did. Thumbs up. So you've got all the different kind of areas that they might want to work on, and then plus some other kind of topic cards. So you've got the ones that you might actually think will be their priorities, but also we're not reducing that. So these are screen grabs, so it actually does go down a bit further. But you can see that kind of we're trying to create symbols that allow them a huge range of choice in what their priority is. And it's very empowering for our students to be able to say kind of things like, when the families are very focused on, say, them using their communication, and the student is then saying, well, actually, no, it's my body pain that is my priority. That can really help families to understand and pull us all into working more closely as a team when they can see what their own child is saying that is their priority. So I found Talking Maps to be really, really empowering in kind of giving our students a voice and ensuring that we as a team working with their family are all kind of shaped together by, like, so the student voice and their own kind of aspirations for their future and what their priorities are in terms of what they want to get managed first.